Okay, welcome to this first session, and I would like to thank you again, Expo, for the invitation and above all for the hospitality. As you can see, the subject of my lecture regards personal data as new currency of the digital markets. The copyright is not mine. The copyright is of Mrs. Kroes, the UA Commissioner to Internal Market and to Competition. And I would like to start with some conclusions. It may appear strange, but I would like to start with the conclusion taken by the UA Council at the end of the last month of October. It has been the first European Council in history dedicated to digital economy, and it has been completely focused on the importance of data information for the future of the European economy and also for the Swiss economy. So, the conclusion: several strategic technologies such as big data and cloud computing are important enablers for productivity and better services. Access to data is a main goal of the digital economy. Promoting standards for secure, high quality and reliable cloud services. Improving a strategy for developing cloud services, big data and open data. So, my first question is, we are our personal data? Absolutely yes. Because if the copyright of Mrs. Kroes says that personal data is the new currency of the digital market, I think that the high price that a company could be forced to pay is the lack of awareness of the importance related to data, personal information, and company information. We are the data we create, we produce, we disseminate within electronic communication networks. And you have to think that also a company as a legal entity has its own data, and personal information related to the company as important as well, like for an individual. In other words, both individual and companies as in the electronic communication networks a digital identity. And what is digital identity? First of all, there is no commonly agreed definition at the European level of the digital identity. There is no legal definition. In Italy, we have recently, in two laws, first definition of digital identity, and we have a definition in a law of 2011 of identity theft as a crime. But we can try to point out the main features, the main characteristics of what the digital identity is or can be. First, digital identity is made of data that uniquely describes an individual or a company, and data which are associated to said entities within an electronic identity system. And this is the first characteristic: data associated exclusively to an entity, which can be an individual or a company. Not only data make a digital identity, there is also a set of attributes of a person, like medical history, purchasing behavior, bank balance for an individual, or for a company, the balance sheets, commercial history, and so on. Then the digital identity is a set of preferences for a consumer, thinks of the purchasing habits or the choices that and the traces thereof that a consumer may leave on the internet. And also regarding an individual, a digital identity can be made also of traits. When I say, for example, in this slide, eye color, I refer to biometric identifiers, things of how spread are nowadays the technologies for validating an identity online by using physical characteristics like fingerprints, eye color, the form of the hand, the geometry of the face, and so on. As I already said, there is no commonly agreed definition, legal definition of a digital identity at European level. But we hold one or more digital identities on the electronic communication. When I say electronic communication networks, I refer to the internet, but I also refer to other devices or other networks. An interactive digital TV is a way to spread when, for example, you may participate to polling or to surveys by an interactive digital TV. You are on an electronic communication network and you are present with your own digital identity, like a consumer expressing a particular vote, or when you, in vote services, you acquire from your TV a movie, there is a profile of your purchase, and so there is another digital identity. So, in these slides, I have tried to collect the main cases of several digital identities which we may hold on the internet, on the electronic communication. Email account. We are different person when using a personal email account or a corporate email account, and this is a very legal issue. And I will talk about in the afternoon, but for example, the Swiss Privacy Federal Commissioner says for companies, if you want to check emails of employees, you should have to give the employees, I disagree, but this is what it is said by the Privacy Commission, you should give, and the Italian data protection authorities say the identical thing, the same. You should give to your employees a personal account, not to be monitored, and then the corporate account, given only for work reason, may be monitored by the employer. I disagree because, in my opinion, emails on workplaces are means of work, are means given to the employee exclusively to carry out the work duties and performances, and so are ownership of the company. And like any other ownership, I have the widest power to monitor in a way, also because the employee must be aware that when he works in workplace, its privacy rights are in a way compressed. Yeah. This is also what, for example, in Italy, the jurisprudence says about, but it's another issue. Anyway, let's come back to the several digital identities. Social network, yes.
But it would be different if you have a directive saying that you're allowed to use.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's the case with.
I do not want to reveal the killer because at the end of the afternoon I shall point out how the policy within a company can assess this issue, and the main answer is, like Detlef obviously went to the point, you have to draft an internal regulation saying to the employees what they are allowed to do and what not. So if in my freedom of organizing my company, if I say, okay, the email account within the company, it's my ownership, I inform you, I explain to you what are the duties and the rights about the account, but I say the account is mine. You may use only for work reason. Personal use is forbidden, is not allowed. If, like the Swiss Privacy Federal Commissioner says, if I have a legal ground and an information to employees related to the correct use and to the decision of the company on how to use email and internet, and if I explain, be careful, because personal use is not allowed, and I reserve the right to monitor if you comply with my instruction. The monitoring, if written in an internal regulation, can be legal. The Privacy Commissioner do not say, and also in Italy it's the same, do not say it is forbidden to check emails of employees. No. He says you may monitor in a very strict space, and you have to inform to spread preventive information amongst the employees. So, several digital identity. On social network, we have another digital identity. In e-commerce activities, on our e-passport, when we ask for health services, and so on, we have several digital identities. And what are the risks associated to say several digital identities? In these slides, you may have a list, you may evaluate this lead: identity theft, we shall talk about, impersonation, bank fraud, credit, fraud to the state, and so on. And what are the consequences of possible abuses if there is no awareness, if there are no correct policies about the creation and the management of data and digital identity thereof? With rival of money, reputation damages, economic and reputation damages for the organization that manages the identity, attribution of the responsibility, legal responsibility, loss of confidential information, violation of electronic correspondence, computer intrusion, and violation of privacy. Another critical issue is that at an international level there is no regulation about the digital identity. There are some guidelines. For example, in 2009 the OCSE released about identity theft and digital identity a set of guidelines. There are technical, the ISO certification technical standards, but there is no legislation, European or international, that regulates in a common, with a common perspective this new matter. So this impact and this affect the possible identity systems, authorization or registration, because there is no interoperability. The technical standard may differ, and so on. To the digital identity in the electronic communication networks, it's linked the matter of authentication and validation of the digital identity, because a critical problem is that on the electronic networks you don't know the subject you are dealing with, because the digital identity may be doubled, may be created, you may create new digital identities, and digital identifiers are not working, may address the problems, but there is no technical unified system to validate. There is no unique and common identification system. And so, you have to be sure about the digital identity of the person whom you are dealing with. So there are two main points. One is registration and the other is authentication. Registration is the process that makes known an entity in a given domain, and authentication is the verification process of the attributes associated with this identity. And how the registration process works? It works on the level of trust. The level of trust of the registration process may be the highest, like a detailed direct verification, e-passport. You check the passport, or you check at a distance, and there is, for example, another example is the digital signature, which guarantee absolutely the direct verification. Less levels of trust, direct verification, for example, background check of clients, third-party verification, until the last level, which is the main sure about the trust, the self-assertion by the holder of a digital identity with no other checks. Regarding authentication, the systems are various. You may use code, you may use a digital signature, you may use biometric technologies, and so on. In general, the business-to-business authentication prioritizes security, while user-to-business authentication tends towards simplicity if you deal with, for example, a consumer. Coming back to the digital identities, we have said that we hold several digital identities, but there are two kinds of digital identity, two categories: the soft digital identity and the strong digital identity. Soft digital identities is associated to services which do not require a critical level of security. So it may be enough a username and a password, or other set of attributes. Think of the question related to a password that may be requested in some services. In these slides, I have listed examples of soft identities: social network profiles, email accounts, online magazine subscription, and so on. Strong digital identities on which the attention of the legislator is currently focused are the identities we use, for example, in our relationship with the state to get some services. We use to being officially recognized. For example, myself as a lawyer in Italy, I have a strong digital identities when I deal with the court in filing official judiciary acts by digital signature or by biometric smart card containing my data, and so on. The point is that, okay, we create any days a massive set of personal data. We create and disseminate several digital identities, and then the real point is, are you aware of the importance of the information? Are you aware? The question is addressed both to employees and both to employers, to the companies. Are you really aware of the importance of the data that you any days create, store, disseminate, circulate, send? Are you aware of the importance of your own digital identities when you present yourself within the electronic communication and you are the holder of the company's image? Let me make an example. It's really risky, for example, when the company allows the creation by employees on Facebook of companies' Facebook web pages without any kind of control. Or when employees and colleagues start exchanging opinions on the institutional corporate Facebook page about the colleagues, the employer, and that's
the management.
The management. It's highly risky. It's not something to be forbidden, but it's something to be preventively assessed and monitored, because on Facebook there is, if you choose to have an institutional image on Facebook, you are the company. I have said we are our data. We are the image we disseminate at the on the network. So so many clients of mine, when I say, okay, you have the Facebook page, but do you have a person inside the companies dedicated to the control, to manage technical and content management of the web page? When the answer is no, this is the lack of awareness, which can create so many damages. So, in my opinion, one of the not technical suggestion is, like I say in this slide, to have light but detailed and precise policies about digital identities, about creation, storage, dissemination of personal data. In a way, it is we shall go in depth about this issue in the afternoon. In a way, it's also mandatory by law, because the Swiss federal privacy law requires specific policies dedicated to the security of the data. But I don't know how many persons shall follow the workshop in the afternoon, but we shall go in depth, and we shall see that according to the Swiss privacy law, there are mandatory organizational measures to be taken within the company for management policies related to the data and the information. Because the risk is the lack of awareness, both within or amongst the employees, lack of awareness of the employees, but lack of awareness of the employer, of the company. I was reading some days ago a report of KPMG about Switzerland, about the Swiss Confederation. This report says that only the 5% of the companies have system or have processes related to the strengthening the awareness about the importance of data. And the 70% about of the companies do not consider a problem the lack of awareness in managing the data. This is a risk, because the lack of policies make the employees violate or breach the data without being aware. And the consequence is serious economic and maybe serious economic and reputational damages for the company. Let me go. Yes, okay. Then another critical point is to have inside the company system to detect immediately a data breach. Okay, I was talking before with Marianna about the recent regulation enacted by the European Union on data breach on June 2013, introducing a mandatory procedure for companies, but not for all the companies, for companies operating within electronic communication networks, so telecommunication operators, providers of electronic services, and so on. The European Union has introduced a mandatory process to detect in 24 hours data breach to be notified to the institutional authorities. Okay, this is mandatory. But I think that it's the interest of a company to have its own system beyond the legislator providing as mandatory. It's because the information and the data are really the patrimony of a company in the digital markets nowadays. So any company should have policies and technical system to detect a data breach occurred, because as I say in these slides, very often the company itself discovers a data breach also after months, or never, or after years. And during this period, the lack of tempestivity also, not only the lack of awareness, the lack of tempestivity when you are aware of an occurred data breach may result into the hacker stealing information in the company network and system and so on. And so we come to the identity theft matter, which is one of the crime. It's a star in the criminal system, because it's the newest development without technology. There is this relationship between increasing of technology and increasing of way to steal identity of the others. Okay, so there is no legal definition of identity theft as a crime, and we was discussing about just before. And so, just to give you an idea, I have taken the only official legal definition of the crime of identity theft contained in the OECD guidelines on identity theft dated 2009. ID theft occurs when a party acquires, transfers, possesses, or uses personal information of a natural or a legal person in an unauthorized manner with the intent to commit or in connection with fraud or other crimes. So identity theft can be a crime as such, or can be a mean to commit or to try to commit other crimes.
So did I get it right? There's a lack of legislation in this respect.
For example, there is no commonly agreed legislation. If you look at the situation in various member states, there are national legislation. For example, in Italy, we have a strict legislation. It's a recent one, but we have strict legislation on identity theft. But there is, as you know, also because the European Union has no competence on criminal matters, so they are exclusively national. But, for example, what, in my opinion, would be very proper or useful is an international agreement, like, for example, the Budapest Agreement on computer crimes. So we have in the Budapest Treaty we have a definition of identity theft, but then the receipt within national jurisdiction of the treaty has changed state by state the legal definition itself. But I had promised at the beginning to be not technical, so let me come back to some amusing information, like, for example, the two ways to commit the identity theft. True name and account takeover. True name, identity theft means that the thieves uses personal information to open new accounts. The thief might open a new credit card account, establish cellular phone services, or open a new checking account in order to obtain blank checks. Then there is the account takeover. Identity theft means that the imposter uses personal information to gain access to the persons, to the victims' existing accounts. So, true name and account takeover. And how the thieves used to operate in stealing the identity, and why. There are unlawful scams which are always the same, opening new accounts, obtaining government benefits, and so on. But technically, how the identity theft work? In three ways. One, exclusively technical, malicious software which are installed into a computer or other device, and they collect with the user completely unaware, they collect information over time. The second way is the traditional hacking of PCs or mobile devices. And then there is the phishing. Let me say that victims of phishing, which is thieves use deceptive mails to get users to disclose personal information. Let me say that phishing victims, they deserve, because, sorry, but they deserve, because phishing, we usually receive, let's say, 20 emails, phishing emails a day, and I don't know if you have data about, but it's incredible how high is the number of persons that fall. Okay, let's say that there are three ways of carrying out phishing methodologies. One is farming. Farming is redirect user from an authentic website to a fraudulent one, which replicates the original in appearance. Do you know how to discover if the website is fraudulent? Read the IP address, read the web address. If your bank is ubs.ch, you are redirected to a mirroring site identical to UBS, but the IP address is not ubs.ch, for example. It's very, it's elementary to discover phishing. Then there is another surreptitious methodology, which is the SM-ishing, sending SMS messages to cell phones users to trick them into going to a website operated by thieves. It's another methodology, but the goal is the same. Messages typically says that unless users go to the website and cancel, they will be charged for services they never actually ordered. And the third, and this is, I should suggest to evaluate this third because it's the most risky, the spear phishing. Impersonating a company employee or employer via email in order to steal colleagues' password username and then entering the company's system. This is a recent and a new methodology. This is the most risky. And when I say before, okay, be careful with Facebook, be careful in the internal regulation in allowing employees to widely use the internet connection. For example, one policy to be adopted, in my opinion, is not to prohibit or forbid the use of the internet, because the internet is a mean of work. But for example, you may try to limit an abusive and damaging use of the internet by registering a white list of websites which the employers really deems strictly connected to the work's duties and performances, and so let the workstation not to go out on the electronic network, but to go to a proxy server inside the company where the white list of websites related to the work duties are previously registered. The opposite system, the blacklist, it's not so effective, because the blacklist, it's something that cannot assure the employers that prohibited websites are not browsed by the employees. Technically, it's impossible to have a blacklist really effective and efficacious. But these slides, I have inserted this slide because don't think that the identity theft is the consequence of Chinese hackers stealing your PCs, because there are no technological modalities to steal your data. There are two methods: dumpster diving and shoulder surfing. Dumpster diving, it's to analyze the trash basket in your room when you destroy the papery documents. And okay, do you know what is a very risky activities within a company? It's, on one hand, the cleaning services. The cleaning services. Because when at daylight they clean your offices, they may steal in your basket documents not destroyed. Dumpster diving. So, in the United States, is one of the main modality for private eyes to investigate.
Yeah, and in Europe.
And in Europe.
Yeah. In Italy, it's res nullius legally,
okay.
so it's legal.
Yeah.
It's legal.
Yeah. Res nullius, yes.
So yes,
It's too technical, res nullius.
Oh, sorry. But I do it, so.
Shoulder surfing. You are online in a public, or you are filling a form, or you are talking about a service. You are communicating by voice your data, and thief is besides you and steal your information. The famous privacy courtesy lines, which, for example, in Italy are mandatory in public offices, are a security measure to avoid this kind of identity theft. So identity theft may occur independently from an highest sophisticated technology. Okay. So, and I have concluded my series of arguments. There are few preventive measures that may be adopted to avoid identity theft. For one, shred sensitive documents. In my law firm, we have, I don't know how... Shredder, okay, yes, okay. Shredder, okay. They are mandatory. They always complain about budget problems, but the shredders are always allowed and are purchased at the highest, blah, blah, blah. Put cars, passports, and other documents somewhere safe. It's logical. As you can see, all the suggestions are logical. For example, choose good passwords and pins. Do not choose your bird name, your dog's name, or a security measure. Don't put post-it with the password on the PCs. This is an aware breach. Use screensaver when you go to take a coffee with colleague, because your emails are the life of a company. And unauthorized persons can be also colleagues with do not have the right to see certain directories or certain documents. Do not think that employees may see everything. It's not a good organization within a company. Every person in charge within a company has to have from an organizational point of view and from an telematic electronic point of view, its own profile, authorization profile. So Alessandro Del Nino may access some directories within the intranet or the internal network of a company. Mrs. Marianna Vintiadis may not, because our duties, our tasks are different. So I have to access information, data, and documents which pertain to my work, duties, and tasks. Choosing password that cannot be discovered, it's a logical suggestion, but 1234 or 0000 or, for example, in Italy, in our data protection code, we have a mandatory provision prescribing that password may be not less than 8 characters, which is 8 characters. I would say 8 character, alphabetic, alphanumeric, points, and whatever. Okay. And obviously, not only you have to choose good passwords and PIN, you have to regularly change. For example, it depends on the kind of password, but a period, it's 30 days, 2 months. Protect computers. Keep in mind how much information is already out. If you set questions linked to a password, remember if this kind of question or this kind of information you have already disseminated on the internet, in a blog, in a forum, so it's public. Minimize who actually has your information. When I say, okay, Facebook, we disseminate the entire world, even the most intimate world of ourselves. We have, because there is the digital identity. We want to share our digital identities. Minimize who actually has your information. And if there is a data breach, go in depth. Go in depth as employees and go in depth with your employer, with your company. And so try to discover what has really happened. And this is the conclusion of my intervention. I thank you for the attention and leave the seat to Marianna to start her presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, just a practical issue, because if I completely acknowledge that it makes sense to change regularly the password, but I don't know, I myself, I can keep in mind maximum 3 passwords at the same time, then I forget which one was eligible for which solution. So as long as there are no reasonable technical solutions to handle passwords in an efficient way, this is completely illusionary.
This is a very good question. What we advise normally is that there are areas which are high sensitivity, like your banking credentials, okay? And then maybe for commercial use, you can have more or less a standard password that unless you have reason, you don't have to. But you need to segment, just like a company should segment, between high risk and low risk. And you should certainly use a strong password across the board. Okay, whatever it is, use a strong one. But I have one for all the basic things, social networking, etc., etc. And also, one of the reasons for having one is that if one gets hacked, you can immediately go and change them all in one go. You know exactly what it is. But then that should be completely different from your bank account, you know, your post office account, or anything, and your corporate account.
And let me answer as well. When I say before, it depends on the kind of password. It depends on the kind of access that the password allows you within the company. Let's say that you have a password to access to a directory containing sensitive documents. There is the need to regularly change, to choose a password and whatever. But if we